it's put in. Okay. Yeah, this is a shark dive in Honduras, and these are all reef sharks. And there's a trench. This is like a little kind of peninsula underwater. It sticks out, and there's a trench that drops off several thousand feet. And these guys basically live down in the trench. That's where they like to be. And the guys that do this, the guys who are out there, you know, in the water with it, are some Italians that moved to Honduras well, now it's probably about 10 years ago. And they decided that they wanted to have a shark diving experience, but you have to condition the sharks to come to you. You know, you get one or two randomly. Sharks don't really like divers. We're too noisy. They run out of interest in divers at all. So it took them 3 years to set this up. And for 3 years, they would take a bucket of food every day at the same time. And they had a bucket of food, they released it, some sharks come, then more sharks come, and then more sharks would come. And so they were able to attract it so that we know you go out at, you know, any day of the week. It has to be at 1 o'clock, get out there by 2 o'clock. And so the sharks, but when we got there, really, maybe only 1 or 2 sharks hung around, were there. Once they dropped this bucket, which is perforated, it's got a bunch of fish in it. Once they drop that bucket down there, then here they come up. And you get 15, 20 sharks. Oh, they just pass right by you. You could reach out and touch them, pet them, whatnot. They were over top you, around you, but they had no interest in us. We weren't what they were smelling or wanting. And see, they're all kind of making circles around it. There's one kind of funny little grouper. He hangs out there. This guy there. He knows he can kind of sneak underneath there and get a few of the pieces before the big guys eat it all. But they like this guy. But when it is done and the fish is gone, they're gone. They're just, it's over. They disappear. Food's gone, they're not going to be there, and they go back down in the trench. One thing you can kind of see of this inherently, although my camera is adjusted to help with light, so in the diving physics part, you'll find that you don't get all light there. You see everything's pretty well green and blue. That's the only color that's going to penetrate that deep into the ocean, so that's why it looks that way. If I had a light, you'd see better true colors. But that's most of this, the hue you see is just due to the depth, 80 foot, that this is at. That's a very pregnant female right there. These are all females. Every one of these were females this day. Okay. Let's see. Let me try to skip forward just a little bit, see if I can't show you the feeding. He's gonna, you may notice his glove, he has a steel mesh dive glove on, so he won't get his hand bit. Probably a smart thing, because there. Now see that they started it, sharks get their head down inside there, they just go flipping it, food around, and they just get in this frenzy. You'll notice a couple of them actually get their heads stuck in a bucket, they're just trying to get the fish out so much. Like this guy. Yeah. In our original dives, this is a 2008 dive. Our original dives with these guys, they modify over time. They let the students go out and dive amongst the sharks and be all out there, And I saw trouble with that. Kids don't watch where they're going. They were kicking the sharks in the head and doing all kinds of stuff. That can't be good. If you get one of them mad at you, that wouldn't be the best thing. But so now, in the later years, they're all up against this kind of ledge, and I'm filming out away from that with that, so it's a little different. But you still get the buckets gone. Look at the sharks. So it's that perfect Pavlovian response. So they have that stimulus, they react to it, and then it's gone. They're gone in that. Okay. Let's see. Now, let's talk about scuba in general. This is 2008. This is a picture we took underwater for Central, and had some of our kids. We had a marine biology group there, and this is what I want here now. That's Barb right there, holding on the side of the sign. It took forever. I thought this would be a really easy thing. Just take a thing down in the water, pop it right down. Oh my gosh, floating around upside down, flying sand everywhere. It took half an hour or more just to get this one picture. wasn't nearly as easy as I thought. Then we also took our banner, we have a banner, and we took it on a dive. 2010, when did we go to the rigs?
2009, 2010.
2009, yeah, and so I took a banner down there, really strong currents. So the kids hold the banner out of the way. They're going off their whole rig, they're out in the ocean. They swim back and they try to hold it again. So the banner is really nice underwater. It looks good for our website. It's just not as easy as you think it should be. Okay. A little bit of history. You know, man's always wanted to go underwater. Man's always wanted to see what's down below there. In fact, they have found, you ever seen those chimes that are a bunch of little round shells, kind of clear wind chimes? Okay, those are called jingle shells. And we know that even natives would take a jingle shell and put it in their eye and squeeze around it, trying to find fish and crabs and lobster and things offshore. So there's always been some type of desire to go underwater. Of course, I guess with all the Spanish gold getting sunk in wrecks and reefs off of islands, they wanted to go get their gold, so they had to try to figure out ways to go down and see what's going on. This is basically putting a can on top of your head with a window was an early method of trying to go down. Some just use buckets, but I think a glass is even better than a bucket. This is an example of another one, a diving bell, where you, of course, have a lot more air than you would there, but again, just limited visibility, if any. Some of them had a window, some did not. And in all these cases, the amount of air was really restricted. So they had to find new methods. Eventually, most aren't old enough, but a few of us might be. Remember the old black and white movies? They used to have the guys going in sponge fishing. Anybody remember the sponge fishing movies? So, and this is a sponge fisherman, Florida. You know, Mediterranean was the sponge capital of the world, you know, because Greeks and everybody liked sponges for bathhouses and such. So when it came to America, they found Gulf of Mexico. Man, that's a lot like the Mediterranean. So you had all these Greek populations occurring all throughout the Gulf, lower Gulf, doing sponging, and it became quite popular. This type of suit, which you saw, Men of Honor, you know, that was the type of suit the Navy also wore at the time. You had this brass helmet with ports on it, this big hose. Early on, like this guy, there was somebody on deck over here pumping air to you. The whole suit inflates, keeps you dry and warm, which is nice, but it's buoyant. So you have to wear massive amounts of lead on your waist. You had to wear big lead boots, very clumsy, but they could get down in the water, stay for a while, and do those things. But you were tethered, hooked to a boat, which was a problem. Now, modern today, and this isn't the most modern Navy suit, but I can't find pictures of it because they don't like to share those things. But this is a Mark 12 suit. This is what the Navy uses today, and it looks a lot like this. But you have a fiberglass style helmet, very light. Communications, lights. There's even gauges inside of the helmet, so you can see what's going on for gas mixtures. Many times these guys, they have a tank in the back, so they're free of a tether. Sometimes they are tethered. And then, of course, this dry suit's much like it was, except probably lighter and easier to get into. Now, the Navy divers, they have a Navy diving lab, Panama City, where we go a lot. It's called the NEDU, Naval Underwater Experimental Diving Unit. And they trained the elite divers of all the services to do really deep stuff. And we used to be able to go do their tour after 9/11. Nobody gets in anywhere. But they would tell us that at that point in time, their divers were going 2,000 foot down in the water, diving. That's, sport divers, 120 foot is our max we're allowed. So that's an incredible depth, and wearing suits like this, really probably going deeper, just not going to tell us. Now this is, just happened here, was it last weekend? James Cameron went this little sub, one-man sub, all the way to the bottom of the ocean. I was talking about this the other day, somebody, they wondered, well, how long did it take? It took about 9 hours of sinking it back. Well, how do you go to the bathroom? Depends. Just like our jet pilots, they had to wear diapers. They didn't like that. I told them, what do you think the B-1 bombers do? They're in the air for 12 plus hours. There was no bathroom. You just put on diapers and go. But what a feat. I don't think you understand it. The last time somebody went down to the trench, didn't go as deep as him, was in the Celeste. And those guys, this is in the 50s, those guys got down there, and the pressure started, they had like 5-inch thick glass ports, and the pressure started to crack the glass. That would have been really scary. So they came up, and nobody's gone since then to him. He's got this special, I didn't know we even had a subject of this. He went down to the bottom. The bottom's about 32,000 feet. Okay, that pressure is about 15,000 psi per square inch. So having 7.5 tons of pressure for each inch of that sub it's amazing they can even build anything like that. So they had enough, fuel or oxygen on things to do it, or air. So that was an amazing thing. I can't wait to see. I know he took his cameras. It'd be a pretty cool, 3D. Or I think he took those, 360 cameras and such. It'd be a pretty experience. Okay, scientists of scuba. There's all types. Scuba is really scientific. Got a lot of stuff. Archimedes, who I know, he's a mathematician, he's a little bit of, he's a philosopher, a little bit of everything. And he gave us the concept of buoyancy. One of the most fun things you can do in scuba is be neutrally buoyant. I mean, how many of you ever wanted to walk in space? Astronauts. Just a couple? Oh man, I did. I always want to go out in space and do spacewalks and do those things. Underwater, that's what you're doing. You're underwater, you become neutrally buoyant. You're hovering like a fish. You just sit there. Any angle you want to be, you can sit there. You can be upside down, right side up. You can do forward rolls, back flips, somersaults, whatever you want. And you're just neutrally buoyant. So it gives you tremendous freedom, where you may not be very gymnastic on surface, underwater. I see people like, we took a physician with us who would be a very, stable, very calm, passive kind of person. First time he hit the water, he's doing backflips and somersaults and stuff. He just thought it was just a tremendous amount of fun. So it is this. So the concept of buoyancy, which means neutral, when you're neutrally buoyant, see, we want buoyancy is everything in diving. If you want to be at the surface, you're positively buoyant, which means you weigh less than the water you pushed out of the way. If you want to sink, which we want to do in diving, you're negatively buoyant, which means you weigh more than the water you pushed out of the way. If you want to be neutral, you weigh exactly the same as the water you pushed out of the way. Now, how we accomplish that's real easy. Lead weight weighs a lot for its space, so it allows us to sink. The buoyancy compensators, the vest we have on, are full of air, and air is very light. That allows us to raise, and we will tweak the air in there to get just at that neutral point, so we can hover. Because really, we want everybody hovering, corals and people kicking up the bottom and breaking off things. We want everybody just kind of hover over the reef, not be right on top of it, and not land on the deck of, ships and cloudy things. So neutral buoyancy is a really important skill. Boyle's law relates to pressure and volume. And this is one of the laws that set a lot of our limits to scuba. How long we go down, how deep we can go in things, because what we find with that, we're breathing pressurized gas. If you're at 99 feet in the ocean, you really have 4 lungs full of air. It's been compressed to the point where each breath is like 4 breaths at the surface. That tells us things in scuba, like one of the big rules of scuba, you can never hold your breath. Ever hold your breath on scuba. We've trained and trained and trained for that. Because holding your breath traps off, and if you drift up slowly, not know it, because underwater there's not really good landmarks we can tell where you are, you could blow your alveoli, because they're only 1 cell thick. They're very thin. They can't take pressure change. So you have to learn to continuously breathe in scuba, in and out, in and out. Just that holding your breath thing is something you have to get past. Charles's law is important in how we fill our tanks, because all those compressors, they have metal heads that are compressing the air. That friction creates heat passing through the air, and therefore we take those hot bottles and eventually cool them down when we dive. We lose volume and such and pressure. So Charles' law relates to how we fill our tanks. Dalton's law is partial pressures, and it relates to how every gas within a mixture has its own properties. That's what it is. It's a mixture. In Dalton's law for diving, though, explains something very important. It gives us one of our limits. We are limited to 120 feet of diving, and that's due to Dalton's law. Because what they found out early on, the Navy actually found this. Navy wanted, and still do, use rebreathers, which means there's no bubbles come out. They have a little chamber that scrubs the carbon dioxide out, puts pure oxygen back in. Okay, and seems like a great thing, except oxygen is a tremendously corrosive gas, very hard on us, especially under pressure. What we found early on If you'd breathe pure oxygen, right after Cousteau got the Aqua Lung going, people thought, hey, grab a bottle of oxygen and go. At 33 feet, oxygen is deadly, kills you. So you cannot breathe pure oxygen. Well, the thing about partial pressure then, as you dive deeper and you keep compressing those gases, you get that partial pressure of oxygen to be the same point as at 33 feet. So that limits us. We can't go into toxic oxygen times, so we can't go, which would actually be 132 feet. So we stay at 120 to stay above it. Now, you may have heard though, if you're watching those Navy films where they do mixed gas diving, helium diving, talk funny? No? Okay. The Abyss, if you're watching The Abyss, they had it in there. If you want to go deeper, which obviously Navy's going deeper, you got to bleed in an inert gas to take some of that, to be another gas in that mixture to take away some of the oxygen's pressure. And they bleed in. So I asked the Master Chief, okay, those guys at 2,000 feet, how much oxygen is in their mixture? 1/10 of 1% is all it is. Because they're going so deep and the partial pressure is so high, they only need 1/10 of a percent oxygen at 2,000 feet. The rest, most of it would be helium in that. Henry's law is the law of solubility. It's why your sodas have bubbles and escape, or if you shake it up, it blows all the soda out. And Henry's law is solubility of gas and liquid. And for diving, what it means, we have nitrogen who likes to go in the blood very easily. And if we stay too long, or go too deep, or come up too fast, nitrogen can come out as bubbles into our system, into our joints. And you've probably heard the bends. That's the bends. Also called decompression sickness today, DCS. Bends. I've known one person to get bent, and he was a dive book captain, and he was breaking the rules. He knew he was breaking the rules. But in all my 30 years, I've never had any of my divers get bent. But basically, it's just that, breaking the rules, pushing the limits. Older divers sometimes think, well, you know what? I've done this forever. I think I can do this much more. And it's not so. One of the things for all of our diving rules up here, we ever have in diving, the Navy's already tested this out. The Navy has taken, 19-year-old, perfectly virile, strong, in shape, incredible males, and test these out. And so when you see a limit, that limit means that's when they started getting hurt. And we're not like them. So we actually need to be on this side, away from the edge, not towards the edge. But that's why people tend to get hurt diving as they push it too far. Cousteau and Gagnon, they in the 40s, Gagnon was an engineer, and he was working it was a gas liquefaction plant. And his son-in-law was Jacques Cousteau, which a lot of you young guys don't know who Jacques Cousteau is. He was a pioneer in marine science and such. He studied strips. Anyway, the father got the two together and said, hey, this guy's got a real interest in wanting to try to dive, and you got this engineering side on how to work with gases. And they built the regulator and patented it in the early 40s. The war came. They actually used it a little bit during the war, had some success with it. Then the two of them decided after the war to repatent it with a new design they called it Aqua Lung, and started selling it. And the Aqua Lung, in 45, when the first Aqua Lung was patented, started to be sold. And that's really the predecessor of modern scuba gear. The Aqua Lung here, this is the original picture of an Aqua Lung. Aqua Lung 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this part here would hook to the tank. They came over both shoulders, and you had this one mouthpiece. And the trouble with it is, the bubbles go out the back, which is kind of cool, not out the face, but you had to kind of roll to breathe. Yeah. In other words, they had valves that went, and it flooded. If you ever got to knock out your mouth, you literally had to roll in circles to clear it. So it wasn't an easy thing to use, but it was the only game in town, so everybody grabbed on and started using it. It was really cool. I actually had one of these. I don't know if I should tell you who gave it to me, because we know he's old. Dr. Perry, he actually had one of these. He dove with her originally. I retrained him into the modern gear, and he gave me his old one, which is really cool. It's antique, and it's kind of a collector's piece. I don't know if you, of course, sea hunt. If I say sea hunt, you won't even understand sea hunt. Yeah, I know. They used to have the old black and white thing called sea hunt. And they were dressed much like this. Now this is actually a UDT, underwater demolition team of the SEALs in the early days. Just a basic blast mask, and talk about television, that black mask just came straight out. That's all you're going to see like that. And then, I can always tell, you can always know divers. Divers always have black rings on their face. That's made of rubber. You ever brush against your tire? And how it comes off black on you? It oxidizes. And so their fins and masks would oxidize over time, and it always had this black ring on their face, so you know they've been diving. But what you see here in this picture, this guy up here probably is better than that. You just basically see a tank, you see a regulator hooked to the tank, and if you look down below, which we barely can see, okay, there's a weight belt. That's his total dive gear. That's what he took out diving. Now, diving back then was an incredibly dangerous sport. That tank's made of steel, which is heavier than our tanks today. They're aluminum. You went out diving. There's no gauges on there. Didn't know how deep you were really. You didn't have any idea how much air is in your tank. And when it stopped, you knew you're done. And you have nothing but weight on you. You have a 30-pound steel tank in your back. You probably have another 20, 30 pounds of lead weight on your waist. And you have no air to go anywhere with. So you better be pretty strong. You better be able to kind of time how long it takes you. You better kind of understand, okay, at 60 feet I got maybe 50 minutes. So, but that wasn't a good deal. A lot of them did die because they literally ran out of air and couldn't get back. Or which that stuff is expensive, you just dump all your gear and swim. That we're going to have too often because really have very expensive equipment at that point in time. Now, eventually, for gauges, I don't know, they didn't take gauges for a while, they went to a thing called a J-valve where you could reach down to your left side and pull, and it would give you an extra 300 pounds. So you could dive along, you go, oof, you pull this baby down, you get 300 pounds, hopefully get to the surface or get to the shore. That was good unless you're kind of like me, who might have forgot to put the valve up before you dove. So when I pulled it down, it was already down, so I had no extra air. Or if you hit a rock and it pushed it down on you, see, still problems. After a series of years there, really into the 60s, they decided, you know what, this is just too dangerous. You've got to put a gauge, you've got to read the tank. So they put a pressure gauge that directly reads the tank, which we submersible pressure gauge, still have one today. You have to have one, and so you monitor your air, with that. So it's not that big of a deal in a sense today. You should know where you're at. Modern scuba gear. This is kind of modern scuba gear where we're at today. Completed from that. We had this big vest, which you notice they didn't have a vest. This gives you not only neutral buoyancy, but also buoyancy at the surface in case you need it. And so this all has a power inflator and inflates off your tank or orally if you want. Actually, the weight belt, I like these. The weight belt's built right into the vest. There's no belt sitting here with those big heavy weights sitting on your hips, or men just don't have rear ends. And the weight belts fall off. It's just a bad deal. This is what happens a lot. So your weight belt would fall off and be lost and whatever all the time. So this puts it right into your BC and clicks in there. It's kind of nice. This is that new regulator that attaches to the tank, and they're extremely say, not complicated, but reliable. I've had regulators I use in my class. I've had them for 12 years, and they're a piece of cake to keep up, and they're functioning well. So they're well built today. These are what you call the second stage. Okay, second stage of the regulator. And this is the first stage where we break down air pressure into varying pressures, and this is the second stages. The pressure coming to these is about 125 psi, which would still be kind of, it's kind of flap your lips around a little bit. So what happens is, inside of these are diaphragms that will break this pressure down into what we call ambient. And that's the cool thing about scuba. I adjust my regulators to be a half-pound inhalation. When you suck in on the regulator, all you have to do is barely go. Your lightest possible inhalation gives you air. You don't ever have to draw for it like the old days. You really had to draw for it. Now you open your mouth up, you're going to get air. So it's almost too easy in a sense, but it's an ambient release at this point. Gauges, you see, we have to have gauges. There's your submersible pressure gauge. This is an analog depth gauge. This is a compass. So you typically have gauges underwater to let you know the things you really need to know. Probably a little temperature gauge on there, which most people probably don't want to know. Mask. The mask and fins of the Red Sea no longer have black skirt. Actually, I don't know if you can tell, there's actually a double skirt. This is a really surgically soft mask They adhere to your face. They have 2 seals there. But I will tell you honestly, there's not a mask built that doesn't leak. They're going to leak. Make you smile. These big grooves, water goes right in there. So if you're a happy diver, your mask leaks a little bit. It's just what it is. So you learn how to get water out of it. But there's no mask in the world that's going to prevent leaking to occur. They can't make it. Fins, this is one of the more advanced fins. This is called a valo. And you know, I never fully appreciated the physics in fins, but there is a monster amount of hydrodynamic physics. All these little ripples here, each of these ripples accomplish water flow off this. And so what you actually get out of a fin like this is decreased effort for movement you get. In fact, it's really kind of neat. In this series of fins, or any series of fins, if you have a flat fin, it pushes you somewhat. You get 2 of those little ripples, pushes you better. 3 pushes you better. 4 pushes you better. This is a valo, it has 5. And that's about probably the limit at which today they'll be able to get that efficiency going. So, you know, where it looks just like a plain old simple plastic fin, there's a tremendous amount of hydrodynamic engineering that go on even in something like that. The snorkel, this is I just want to show you this too. Hey, who's been snorkeling? Okay, did you kind of not like having the water and the snorkel and all that stuff, having to all the time? They've gotten truly good dry snorkels now. This is a dry snorkel. So if you dove down, it seals off, come up, you breathe. And so that kind of eliminates some of that having to, you know, blow out water and get some in your mouth and all those things. This is probably the biggest piece of advancement there is out there. This is a computer, dive computer. And I have probably half my sets have dive computers. I have to have one for going up and down a lot. Wife has one. They tell you everything you need. Important things to diving is how long you've been down, how deep you went, the profile of what you went. Did you do anything that was really not right while you're down there? You break any rules while you're down there? And did you come up nice and slow, your ascent rate? And if you come up, should you stop for a little time to let off excess gas? Well, those are a lot of things keeping track of. And the computer does it all. You hit the water, it's on. Okay, wherever you go, it goes. When you're out of the water, it's out of the water, so it knows you're breathing off gas and you're getting better. You jump back in the water, it knows you're in the water. And so for the whole week, it tracks everything you're doing. And it tells you exactly. So it's looking at what we basically call tissue profiles. And there's a scientist called Haldane, and he invented 7 tissue profiles for the absorption rate of nitrogen, because not every tissue absorbs nitrogen at the same rate. Fat is your best absorber of nitrogen, then you have, you know, skeletal muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue, epithelial tissues, etc. So each of the tissues will absorb at a different rate, and so what they do, they come up with a composite of tissue absorption in this computer. It's a simulation now. It's a, you know, simulating those tissues. So it knows to tell you, okay, you know what? You have 5 minutes left at this depth before you've done too much. And so you go up a little bit, so well, now you got 7 minutes because you went up, you're less deep. And so it does that. Or it'll tell you, in 1 minute you run out. And if you do run out, let's say you ignore the computer. My computer, it's hard to ignore. It starts beeping, and then it starts flashing yellow, then it starts flashing red. So I have to be really kind of just adamant not to notice my computer's telling me, hey fool, look at me. My computer does another thing I'll talk about here soon, but nonetheless, you know, they tell you, hey, this is what's going on. If you'd actually stay longer than you should, you're breaking a rule. They're going to say, okay, and they're going to track you through all that. But as you come up, the main thing you got to do if you break rules is to stop and wait for a while to exit to off gas. They'll tell you stop. They'll come down for you. They'll tell you go up. They'll tell you stop again, come down for you. So they really take all the thinking out of it. They make you tremendously safe today. And really, I wouldn't personally dive without a computer just because of the amount of things they do for you.
And you don't share them.
And yeah, you cannot share them because that person goes up or down below you and they're off a computer. They'd have to be tied to your side to make it work, and no. And they're still getting better and better. Mine, the next thing mine does, mine actually calculates my air consumption ratio. In other words, how fast I'm breathing. And so mine's looking at 2 things: the amount of nitrogen I'm actually concentrating and how fast I'm breathing air. And it'll tell me, okay, you have 32 minutes left at this current depth at the rate at which you're breathing, or you have 40 minutes left at this depth through your nitrogen. So I can look at either one. Either one become critical, starts flashing, so I can look and see which one is doing what. And it really frees you so much. So the computers today are amazing. Now this is one hooked to the air hose to monitor air consumption. They have wrist ones, they have watch ones. My watch is actually a computer too, not nearly as detailed as those. But it'll be, my watch is so sensitive it kind of drives me nuts at times. You'll hear it maybe in the video here a little bit. It beeps at me when I'm doing things like going up too fast, which it thinks it's too fast, but it's not really too fast. You hear this beep, beep, beep. And water carries sound so well. Everybody in the water is going, what is that beeping? Almost sounds like a garbage truck backing up. But you can find all types of computers out there.
They even tell you when you can fly again.
Huh?
I said they even tell you when you can get on an airplane.
They do. Yeah, and that's a big thing. People don't think about that vacationing, but you have to wait 24 hours before you get on a plane because you're going out in the atmosphere. They do not pressurize jets to sea level. They pressurize to somewhere between there, so you're letting more pressure off. It's exposing you. So, no, you can't fly right after dive. In fact, we were in Costa Rica. Now, I've known that forever, but I love diving. And in Costa Rica, I wanted to do one last dive before we left in the morning because everybody else was going to go shopping. I don't want to go shop. I want to go dive. And he said, you can't dive today. I said, why not? Because you're driving over the mountains. Oh, yeah. Up in the mountains, let pressure off, same thing. And I wasn't thinking, I knew about flying. I just never thought about in a bus. But going higher elevation puts you at risk. So, yeah, it tells you when you can do those things safely. Yeah, and that's important. Diving physics, just some of the cool things about diving in terms of physics. Sound. Sound is omnipresent. Sound is everywhere. The thicker the media, the better sound waves go. This is so much better carrying sound than water, and water is so much better carrying sound than air. And so, underwater, you might think it's quiet underwater. You hear all types of noises. You hear fish, that's why they call them grunts and all types of things. You have types of fish that'll grunt and make noises. You'll have little clams that'll be breaking things. You'll have snails crushing things on their shell. You'll hear crabs, there's snapping shrimp. There's just all types of things making noise. And you'll hear your partners. And that's the thing, your partner may make a squeal like, ee! You won't turn and look at them. You'll turn and go, where are you? Because you'll hear that noise. You won't necessarily know where it's coming from. Boat motors is kind of disturbing. You will think a boat is getting ready to cut you in half. The first time you dive, you hear this, look where you're back, oh my God. This thing of a 40-foot keel? No. But it carries sound so well. If you actually go to the surface, it's probably a boat a mile away, going away, and it sounds like it's coming right down your back. In fact, we dive to the channel sometimes in Panama City, and the destroyers and oil tankers come through there with a boom, boom, boom. And it still bothers you. You're down 50 feet, you're way away from the middle of the channel, and the sound still is overwhelming to you. You still almost feel the propellers with that sound. Light, we kind of talked about light there with the sharks, about everything blue and green. See, because of the refraction index, there's no white light, and every light, Roy G. Biv, every color has its own inherent wavelength. Because of that, when it hits water, it bends at its own inherent angle. And what happens generally is that red planes off first, orange next, yellow next, and so they don't go much more than 30, 40 foot down as a color. And so you'll see it. So, and kind of with that too, I don't know if you understand how color works. Nobody really has any very colorful on, black and white things. Yellowish. Okay, let's take yellow. So here's her shirt yellow, and we know her shirt's not really yellow. Her shirt's every color but yellow. It's absorbing everything. It's reflecting yellow back to our eyes. We're seeing like a mirror. And so you have to have yellow wavelength to hit her shirt and bounce into our eyes. If there is no yellow wavelength, there's nothing to bounce into our eyes. So therefore, when you're down at 40 feet, there is no red wavelength, and therefore nothing appears red. So that's kind of cool too, because if you're diving, you always get scratched a little bit. Some, shipwrecks, corals, things happen. And when you first get scratched diving, you go, ooh, look at that, it's brilliant green. Kind of fluorescent green. You kind of go, wow, that's pretty cool. Now, it doesn't give you the permission to stab your buddy with a knife to see them bleed like that. But it is kind of a cool event with those color changes. As you go deeper, it gets just into that the shark fin was 80 foot, gets into pretty blue and green. Now, how do you get color back? This is so cool. You buy a flashlight. It's like Mickey Mouse's magic wand. Everywhere the flashlight goes, wow, look at a fish. And you go along like that, and you go, and you're sitting there going, all the time, kids will come back to me. That's kind of boring. Nothing was very colorful. Yes, because you couldn't see it. If you take a flashlight, it's like, wow, that fish and that coral and that sponge and everything, the light just comes alive to you. Kind of why night diving is so cool, because night diving, you got to have a light. And so everything you see is colorful. So people are like, oh, night diving, they're more colorful. No. They're the same color they were in the daytime. It's just you're just seeing that limited spot on the bottom. So other physics with that, let's see, sound, light, tips won't matter. Those are the big ones. Those are the cool ones with that.
How about pressure?
Pressure? Every 33, it's a good question. Every 33 feet down in the ocean, it's about 15 psi. Okay, 15 pounds of pressure. And so as you dive down, you're increasing the pressure at time. But the thing about all of our trapped gas areas, okay, our tank, of course, equalizes the minute it goes to our mouth. That temperature or that pressure is the same as the water. But like our sinuses and ears, all you got to do is grab your nose, blow. You immediately equalize pressure because you have the compressed air you're breathing. And so there's never any real pressure things. You could dive, they get 2,000 foot, you're not going to feel pressure in your ears. It's going to be the same nose clear.
How often?
Whenever you feel pressure. Everybody's different. My wife takes forever to get down. She has narrow eustachian tubes and I'm like a rock. I can grab my nose and just hit the bottom. Boom. So it's by the shape and size of your eustachian tubes. They go from your middle ear to your throat. They allow you to equalize easily.
The diving computer, like if a big group goes down together, is everyone the same?
Well, my gear, I have about half my gear has computers on it. And, but everybody's under, you're with buddies. You always dive with a buddy or a group, okay? So bottom line, the person who runs out air first or runs out time first, the whole group goes up. But your computer keeps you safe. So everybody's on their own inherent, they have to be monitoring what they're doing. You know, all of them should be fairly close, although you can actually tweak a computer to be aggressive, where it gives you more time, or be conservative, gives you less time. You can do those things, so that could be some inherent differences. But basically you're in a group, and whoever in the group runs out first, you go up. And for me, and bar probably for now, those so long, I never run out of air. I always run out of time, because everybody's gone. Everybody's gone, I'm sitting down there by myself going, well, this is not a lot of fun. One dive I did in Honduras, so I told Barb, I'm not coming up until I run out of air. And I was down almost 2 hours, just running around looking at things by myself. Because your fuse, the last day, I've been coming up with everybody else, kind of so we could go and do things. But you basically stay there, watch your gauges, and do those things.
But you don't, again, you just don't share computers. Computers just for you personally.
Yeah.
Because everybody breathes at different rates, they build up the nitrogen at different rates, and so it builds only on you. But you do dive in groups. Okay.
Oh, we're always in big groups now. When I dive, it depends if somebody got lost or not. I may have 2 or 3 people hanging on to me because they know I'll get back. And so you're kind of hard to move. They'll be grasping. They don't want to get lost. And it gets better over time. But yeah, we're always diving with the groups and such, and it's very safe. And the other thing with me, I feel that responsibility. I'm typically the first person in and the last person out. So I'll jump in first, make sure everything's going on. I'll kind of watch everybody. And then I'm going to music here. I'm going to show you some just clips. This is a Honduras dive 2006, but it had a lot of nice different clips in it. That's me breathing. Water carries sound so well. My camera's right here, and even though we don't have a microphone built into the camera, penetrates that steel hull, the camera goes right into the airspace, and so everything I do, maybe my watch beeping, you'll hear through this. There's just no way to not do it. We're going down when it really dies. This is probably about 60 foot where they're at right now. There. Now see, I don't have lights on my camera. This is 60, 70 footish. And that's how light it is. It is not dark and clammy. You know, it's very light and nice. And you can see the surface thing so close. It does seem that way because one of the things when you look at water refracting makes everything look closer and larger. So the shark you saw really was 12 foot. It's probably only 9 foot. You know, because of that refraction of the light. This is looking across again. You're not seeing a lot of color because we're at depth, but it's looking across a typical reef. Seeing a lot of little cool corals. This is pillar coral. And they get monstrous. I mean, they can get like 10, 12 foot this big around. And look at it. See the little pops? They just, one of my favorites, they just flutter in the breeze. Now, they have an inherent brown color to them because virtually all corals farm a dinoflagellate called zooxanthella. And so they help supplement their feeding with this algae that lives inside of them. It's really kind of a cool thing. This is a soft coral. This is a hard coral over here. These guys are soft corals. You'll see that they have a proteinaceous style that tends to move. This is over here a sea fan, sea whip, another soft coral. There's a nice barrel sponge. That's a kind of a basket barrel sponge. Some of them get big enough I could get down inside. So they get to be, and that sponge like that will be literally hundreds of years old. Nobody gets inside them because you don't want to hurt them. And here's a queen angel down here. And you are seeing some yellows here with mine because I did a filter that brings colors back a little bit to the water. A couple of the queen angels, very beautiful fish. That fish is probably about that big. You're trying to figure out size on them. That's a hamlet, blue hamlet. There's a blue chromis in that picture. You see divers ahead of us there with the bubbles going up. So you can only see where I was at because it's so clear you're able to see. Visibility in a place like this is 100 plus. It means you can see 100 or more feet away, and so it's really almost limitless. You go over here to the edge, like this is a wall going out to the floor, and you can go over the edge right here. You can see the floor to 120 foot. You'll be able to see it fine, see fish from on the floor. It's just very, very clear. Another view of some barrel sponges. And one of the guys take pictures. Here's going through. This is a coral canyon. That's my watch going on. This is a coral canyon where you have fingers of coral going down to the bottom. Now when you come out down here, this is about 90-ish feet. You start at 60 foot, you go down through these coral canyons, come out there. Sometimes they're completely enclosed on top. Really fun, really cool. See a lot of fish hiding inside there now. Now one of the things that happened since, this is 2008, and we just saw it in Belize this summer. One thing that's happened that's been very disturbing, some idiot aquarist. Have you ever seen lionfish in pet stores in the saltwater? Very beautiful, big fish, poisonous fish. Somebody let more than a couple loose, at least the males and females. They have been in the Caribbean breeding now, and I've never seen one in my life. They're from South Pacific. And every dive guide now has a poke hole to kill them, trying to make an attempt to, because they're going to compete with native species, you know, and such. But there is this, and so as you go through caves like that now, you see little lionfish hiding up in here, which makes you should be careful because they are poisonous. But also they're kind of ambush predators and such. It's just a sad thing. One of our guys here, he's seen this little guy. The guys are amazing. They know where everything's at. They'll point out things. I'm not sure what he's pointing out in this particular view. He always wants me to video it. What have we got here? Oh, the crab. Big old crab there. So that's a good sized cancer crab. He'd probably be about this big across. Okay. There they're out across the bottom, going around, look for shells, whatnot. There's Barb, got somebody she's towing along. Oh, more eel. This is green moray. Over here to the side, this guy right here, I had to get my camera up into this. This is a green moray, which are really pretty docile. He probably would have been about 6, maybe 8 foot long, been about this big around. Good sized guy. They like living holes. You just don't bother them. It's their hole. You never stick your hand in their hole. They don't like that, but they don't mind you looking at them. Sometimes they'll come out and follow you. Sometimes they'll come out and swim along with the group for a while. They're just, you rub their belly and play with them. Off flats there. Here's a wreck. It's very cool to come across wrecks. Again, this is probably, these wrecks were always at 100-ish feet. There's one a little bit later that I know was 120 foot. But kind of get an idea of what it's like. You know, you have little dark holes and such you go down into. Oh, another moray eel. Hiding there. Kind of hanging out. Those teeth were grasping. I know they look like they're being mean. They're breathing. They're just breathing. He's filling his mouth full and pumping out his gills. Full-grown green morays are about this big around and 12 foot long. They're pretty good size. Of course, you're too young, I know. The movie The Deep had a big green moray in it, and that was, of course, it was all Hollywood stuff. It was right. Look at the colors there. Now, I do have a lot. This does have a light on it. I'm trying to flash on and get those colors there. Across the reef. Let's go along the wall. You kind of see how the wall drops off. This is cruising along the wall. You got to really watch and be attentive to your depth as you do that.
That's a good time.
I know this is night dive here. Here's night. If you want to night diving, my camera is very low light, so it doesn't look as black as it is. Everybody else's is black with their flashlights. My camera just has a low sensitivity, low lumens, so it could do that. Yeah, here they found an octopus. Octopus like to come out at night, they don't like to come out at daytime, and they're a lot of fun to play with. Very cool. If you just stick your hand by an octopus, they are so doggone curious, they will come out. There he is right there in the light. They'll come out, he goes away there. If you stick your hand down there, he can't stand it. He's going to come out and touch you, feel you, see, what is that? And they'll start crawling up your arm, looking at you. They're really a lot of fun to play with. They change colors, just, with the chromatophores, just like that. They have such incredible color changes. I can't remember that far back this guy came out anymore or not. Probably. They don't like staying there. There's his eyes. So if you stick your finger up next to it, try and get my finger there next to it so he can come out and touch me. Now, of course, the other thing you have to remember, octopuses, they're venomous. They have venomous saliva, so it hurts like crazy. They bite you. But they typically don't bite you. Here's a good view. This is the wreck we're on. This wreck, if you want to go really deep, this wreck is about 120 foot. Again, loss of most color and such. But this is a fairly deep wreck. People coming in and out of the wreck, going through the. It was a big enough wreck, you can go through pieces of it, then come out. Think about that, at 120 foot, you literally got about 10 minutes. And that's why we don't do a lot of deep diving, because I'd rather dive for an hour. So sometimes it's kind of cool to go do a wreck deep. This is that doctor right here who's doing somersaults. This is his first dive trip, when he got out, started doing somersaults early on. Okay. Let's. Oh, cuttlefish. Look at this guy here. That's a little cuttlefish squid. You see him? Just like an octopus, has tremendous color changes. This was a mated pair, and actually got a whole other set of video. You can see the flash color on top, maybe 11 for his light. These two are mating. And octopus and squid mating is kind of nonchalant. The male makes a spermatophore full of sperm, and he basically hands his little packet of sperm to the female. She grabs it. She'll go into a cave here, and I think she's going right now. There she goes. She goes into a cave. She'll go into a cave. She'll break open the sperm packet. She'll take her eggs one at a time and fertilize it, and she glues it on the top of the cave. They let me sit there and film this. And then he'll come back, and he'll flash colors a little bit. If you watch real close, he'll take an arm and go real quick at her, and that's when he's handing her the packet. But it was just fascinating. The guys upstairs, I sat there and I almost ran out of air. I waited forever just watching this, and the dive guys thought it was just absolutely nuts. But it was just fascinating. I've never seen in my life, nor I've ever seen footage of this. There he is. See his little arm went up there. He goes up to her mantle cavity, hands her that spermatophore and such. So that's just kind of a cool thing in nature. And you know what? I can dive an area 100 times, but every time I dive, there's something I see new. I mean, there's some animal I haven't seen before, something I haven't seen the same way. That for me, it never gets boring. There's always cool thing there. That was a real good picture of him handing me. Okay, there's Barb. She was waiting with me.
Have you seen any snake down there?
Sea snakes, no. There's South Pacific. There's a lot of eel-like guys, but not sea snakes. No.
What about jellyfish?
Oh yeah, jellyfish. But jellyfish, no big deal. You're diving, you see them, you swim around. The trouble with jellyfish, people don't see the tentacles and they get hit and it really bothers them. So diving, most people never get stung because you just swim around them, over, under, around them. This is basically, I guess that's about the end of the thing. So any questions then? We're running out of time. But
Like, whenever you're right there, is it like hard to swim or hard to?
no, the fins are great. You, first off, you get neutral, so you're hovering like a fish. So that's really, really easy. And the fins push it. And here's the other thing. It's not an Olympic sport. It's a pleasure sport. So you basically go slow. In fact, the real key, the divers eventually find, the slower they go, the more you see. If I will just stop, the whole world comes alive. You get to the reef and just stop. You'll see these little cool shrimp, all types of colors doing things, and fish doing things you would never have seen as you cruised over. Another thing, kids come back, I didn't see a thing. No, they were a B-1 rocket cruising the reef. Everything saw their size, they hide. Then they went by, they come back out. That happens. If if they see you, they're going to hide, but then you wait a minute, they'll come back out and go, okay. But if you just knew nothing but cruise, everything hides from you. So yeah, no, it's really easy to move. In fact, it's nice because, again, you go at a leisurely rate. You go slow and take your time and see everything.
What about swimming back up?
Oh, you just
Is that hard?
no, again, neutrally buoyant, just like a fish. You just swim gently kick and go back up. No, it's not at all. And it only takes a foot per second, max. So, if you're 90 feet, it takes 90 seconds, a minute and a half to get to the surface. So it's not a bad deal. No, it's the quiet environment's very easy to move in.